Hello everyone and welcome to The Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. Following up on our Vortex last week about reception of Holy Communion in the hand, we thought we'd finish stirring the pot by talking about reception of Holy Communion while kneeling. There are great similarities between the two issues. First, the preferred method for reception is kneeling. Got that? The preferred reception method is kneeling. It's the default, so to speak, for the universal church. It stretches back to antiquity, in fact. Despite being the default, Rome has allowed some national conferences of bishops, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops included, to permit reception of Holy Communion while standing. Notice the use of the word permit. The reason we use this word is because permission had to be granted before the practice could be given approval, because it goes against the accepted universal norm, which is the preferred method, remember? Therefore, reception of Holy Communion while standing is the exception, not the norm, not the rule. Just as reception of Holy Communion in the hand is the exception, not the norm, not the rule. So, to receive Holy Communion in the hand while standing is the double exception, deviating from the norm twice, not just once. Now, let's be clear here, absolutely clear. It is not sinful or immoral or unethical or anything of the kind to receive standing or in the hand or both. But do understand, it is not, absolutely not, the preferred manner in the universal church. That is evident from the very process mandated by the Vatican, which a nation's bishops must undergo to deviate from the norm. The two methods of reception are not equal in the sense of preference. The Church absolutely does and has for centuries and centuries expressed a preference for one method over the other, and that method is kneeling and on the tongue over standing and in the hand. When you go to Rome these days, if you were able to receive Holy Communion from the Pope, you would both kneel and receive on the tongue. And despite stories circulating that there is some other motive for this other than to increase reverence for the Eucharist, one need only look to all the other practices the Pope has installed or moved into prominence again to know his mind on the issue. The Pope is a champion of restoring the sense of the sacred to the liturgy. He has written about it and spoken about it extensively for decades, both as Pope and formerly Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. He has slowly surrounded himself with men like Cardinal Raymond Burke, to name just one, who are also champions of such a restoration. Around Rome, it's called the Reform of the Reform. Get that expression, the Reform of the Reform. It means taking stock of the many abuses that have infiltrated the Mass following the reforms after Vatican II and reforming them, the abuses. Hence the phrase, the Reform of the Reform. The Holy Father and his confidants are deeply disturbed about these abuses and the lack of reverence for our Lord in the Eucharist that seem to follow very quickly on the heels of such abuses. There's no denying that one of the driving forces for the manner in which Pope Benedict now distributes Holy Communion is his eye to a greater reverence shown our Blessed Lord in the sacrament. Which brings up a curious point. We get many emails from people who tell us of personal stories where the priest or a layperson refused, get this, refused to give them Holy Communion because they were kneeling. Many such stories. In not a few cases, the priest has actually stopped distributing the sacred host and berated the person publicly, right there in the communion line, ordering him or her to stand up, using intimidation and deliberate humiliation. This is disgraceful. In other cases, priests or others have used their position to insist beforehand that people approaching not kneel or not receive on the tongue or both. Again, let's be very clear. The universal norm of the Church is reception on the knees, on the tongue. Moreover, it is specifically forbidden to refuse someone Holy Communion because they are kneeling or desirous of receiving on the tongue. Forbidden. The whole question surrounding this must be seen in light of its motive. It's simply inescapable and certainly worthy of discussion. Why are so many people in the clergy so opposed to people receiving on their knees or on their tongues? Quite frankly, why do they care? If the Vatican, if the Pope, if Rome says it's okay, not only okay, but actually, again, the preferred method, well, then what's the big deal? And in answering that, please don't throw out some lame notion like, it appears that such a person is acting like or believes that they are holier than everyone else. That's being judgmental, the only mortal sin that exists for modernists. And please, don't fall back on the other usual claim, it makes others in the congregation feel uncomfortable because they don't kneel or don't receive on the tongue. You know, that gate swings both ways. For those who do kneel or receive on the tongue, they are uncomfortable with the massive amounts of irreverence that oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes accompanies reception in the hand while standing. And don't pretend that you don't know what we're talking about. And as for that other ridiculous excuse that other people trip when someone kneels, oh please, if that was the case in our 2,000 years of sacred history, we would by now have hundreds of billions of examples of the faithful tripping and falling over each other for centuries. That argument is a ruse. If that's the real concern, then simply tell the people, let's all kneel, or set up separate lines for reception in different manners, or whatever. Here's the bottom line. Reception on the tongue while kneeling is the norm. Everything else is the exception. But don't take our word for it. Click right over here and watch the video with Cardinal Francis Arinze explaining the whole issue. If someone desires to kneel before the King of the universe and receive him without touching him in their hands because they truly feel unworthy and wish to demonstrate their honor and piety to him, not the rest of the congregation, then they are free to do so. And in fact, given the current state of affairs, it might be a good thing to actually encourage others to take the same approach. God love you. I'm Michael Voris.
Please help us keep delivering these kinds of messages that so desperately need to be heard and acted on. Join RealCatholicTV.com today as a premium subscriber. Become immersed in the faith established by Jesus Christ. The Catholic Church is the only hope against evil because that is its God-given mission. As our Lord said, apart from me, you can do nothing. Join RealCatholicTV.com today as a premium subscriber and come to learn and love Christ more deeply.